You may have heard the news or in the news that the United States government has officially stopped making pennies. So it is official. The government no longer makes cents. They're now taking away your ability to give them your 2 cents worth. That's what it is. You can't, do that anymore. Now, I bring this up because the first coin minted in the United States by the United States government was a penny. It was known as the Fugio cent, and it was authorized by Congress in 1787 and designed by Benjamin Franklin. And I have a picture of that here. This is the first penny, the first coin minted by the United States government. And on the back of it, it had 13 links in a chain linked together for the 13 colonies, and said, "We are one with States United" around that. Now, a little later edition changed it to United States, but the original was States United in the coin. And then on the front of the coin, it had the sun shining down on a sundial with the word Fugio. And Fugio is Latin for I flee or I fly. And what it means is time flies. It gets away from you quickly. Time flies, right? And then at the bottom had the motto, "Mind your business." Okay, that was the motto. Mind your business is such an American national motto. Okay, we tell mind your business. Now, when we say mind your business, we generally mean we want someone to stay out of our business. Okay, that is not actually what Benjamin Franklin intended necessarily in this coin, or what they were saying here. What mind your business on this meant on the first penny was work diligently and pay close attention to your affairs. Mind your business, quite literally. The intention was to engage in hard work and with a deliberate focus. The coin reflected those early American values of industry and unity. Now, we're going to see today that paying attention to industry, minding your business, is also a strong biblical value. And so we're going to begin in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 23. "Know well the condition of your flock, and pay attention to your herds. For wealth is not forever, not even a crown lasts for all time. When hay is removed and new growth appears, the grain from the hills is gathered in. Lambs will provide your clothing, and goats the price of a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food for your household, and nourishment for your female servants." What we're being told here in Proverbs is that time flies, so you better mind your business. Be diligent to pay attention to whatever it is in life that produces your income. You may make your living off livestock. Well, if that's the case, you'd better know well the condition of your animals. It's important that you take care of them so that they can continue to provide you with the income you need. If you make your living at farming, you need to be on top of whatever's plant season it is. If it's planting season or harvest season or weeding season, you want to be on top of that because each season quickly passes and you have to be ready for whatever season is coming next. I thought about it in my own terms. If you're a preacher, that means when you finish preaching one sermon, you start writing the next one because next Sunday's coming. Okay, it's a relentless cycle. You got to know the cycle. And so whatever work you do, whatever type of profession you're in, whatever your investments are, you need to know the cycle of your work and the condition of your resources so that you use to earn a living. Okay, if you're a carpenter, you need to know the condition of your tools. If you're a mechanic, you need to know how to, the condition of your shop. Whatever it is, nothing lasts forever, not even the crown. That's what we're told here in Proverbs. So don't take any prosperity you have for granted. If it is not maintained, then it will quickly disappear from the lack of you paying careful attention to the industry that supports your living. In other words, time flies, so mind your business. You and your household will benefit from it if you do, if you pay attention to these matters, but you will suffer if you do not. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 27, we read, "Complete your outdoor work and prepare your field. Afterward, build your house." And I think people often get this priority backwards. People often are more concerned about their home being comfortable, being nice, than they are about maintaining their job. They value their home more than they do their job, which their job is their source of income. The Bible says that's backwards. You are to see to your work first When your work is done, after you have secured your means of income, once you've planted your field and you've got your field running correctly, your farm's going, then you've done the necessary work for survival. You can now worry about building your house. You make sure your long-term income is secured first. The source of your income comes before your comfort at home. Now, in our society, that sounds backwards because our society likes to do things the opposite of the way that God said. Okay, here we're going to have a cultural rub, but our society does not like what God would say here. Wisdom is to make sure you have secured your income for the future before you spend it on making yourself comfortable. That's wisdom. It doesn't do you any good to have a nice, comfortable house, but no food to eat or no money to pay the mortgage. Okay, you make sure you got the income going first. Now, it seems like life would be easier if we didn't have to work so hard. I think that's often a goal in life, right? We would prefer not to work as hard as we do. But here's the truth. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 4 says, "Where there are no oxen, the feeding trough is empty, but an abundant harvest comes through the strength of an ox." If you don't have an ox, then you don't have to do the work or endure the expense of filling the feeding trough. Don't have to grab the pitchfork, clean up after it either. So, but if you don't have an ox. But you also will not get the abundant harvest that would have come through an ox pulling your plow. Now, some of you are looking at me like, raccoons looking at truck headlights, saying, I don't have an ox. My neighborhood doesn't even allow oxen. My HOA doesn't allow it. I don't even know what an ox eats. I mean, we don't, But the truth is, this verse is not really about oxen. It's about the reality that you must make the investment in time, work, money, if you want to make a profit. You want the benefit of the harvest, you have to go through the labor of having the ox, the expense of having the ox. If you want to take the easy way out, not committing the time, the labor, the finances, the resources necessary to making a profit, then you won't make a profit. Why? Because the plentiful harvest comes from the investment of the resources that provide the harvest in its due time. That's the illustration given in the ox. I knew a guy out in a town when I was in Congress pastoring out there. He wanted to open a cafe, and he found very quickly that what the county required in terms of construction and permits for his little cafe, he said he would never make a profit during his lifetime. It was so expensive to open this small eatery. You need to do your research before you start a business, or you're likely to lose money. In fact, about 20% of small businesses fail within the first year, around 50% by the 5-year mark, and roughly 65 to 70% by the 10-year mark. There are a lot of factors that go into why that happens, but most of them could have been mitigated by doing proper research before opening business. Do your homework, it'll pay off. Anyway, instead of opening his cafe, this guy bought a food truck. And so he could do mobile catering in the area. And he actually rented some space for seating in the exact same place he was going to put the cafe. But there were no permits required for construction to do seating. And so he did this. So at a fraction of what it would have cost him to have gone into a physical structure for his restaurant, he was able to make a profit on his investment in a reasonable time frame. Opening a food truck. Served the same food, served it in the same location, different set of permits. But before he could do this, before he could have his first customer, he had to buy the truck. He had to get everything cleaned. He had to stock it with food. In fact, I appreciate it. I guess when you open a restaurant, you have to do a shakedown. You have to, practice cooking for people. So you get everything in order, make sure. And so he did it for the church. One Sunday after church, we went out and we all got to order what we wanted, free lunch. It was like a free potluck, but he made it for us just to do his shakedown and get everything going. I miss that guy. He was a good guy. But if he wasn't willing to do the work of cleaning and stocking, he could have never got to the point of selling food to the public. And if he had named his truck the Ox, that would be a good name for his food truck. This would have gone so much better as my sermon illustration. Okay, because without the ox, you don't get the harvest. But that is what's required. Before you get the harvest, you must make the investment of the time and labor of whatever it is that's going to produce it. Maybe we can say it this way. To make a living, you must be diligent to mind your business while time allows. Money just doesn't magically fall in your lap. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So we find the Bible supports the idea of hard work, planning, and industry. It's needed, not just for prosperity, but for survival in the real world. You have to make a living in order to survive. It's not the same as making the pursuit of wealth the absolute goal of your life. That's a different story. In fact, we're going to jump a little bit to the New Testament. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9, Paul writes this. He says, "But those who want to be rich fall into temptation, a trap, and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. But you, man of God, flee from these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness." We're warned that the desire to get rich is a trap. It leads people to their destruction and has led many people away from the faith. We are to be diligent in working hard. We are to be diligent in providing for our needs and the needs of our family. We are to be good at what we do, but the goal of getting rich in and of itself will only cause you trouble. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 20, we read this, "A faithful person will have many blessings, but one in a hurry to get rich will not go unpunished." Proverbs promotes the idea that we should be industrious. We should be diligent to work so that we can provide for our needs. But it warns that the person who's in a hurry to get rich is going to face punishment. They're going to be in for trouble. There really isn't a difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament on this subject. People tend to have their focus, but the Bible's pretty consistent across the board. As followers of Christ, we should always be hardworking, good stewards, engaging in productive business, not for the pursuit of wealth. I'm not doing it to get rich. We work to provide for our needs, for our family's needs, for the ministry within God's kingdom, not just to line our own pockets. However, the verse in Proverbs does give us another concept about the Christian business person. It says they are faithful. They are faithful. Faithful. Whatever we do, whether we are making a product or providing a service, we are to be faithful in our work. The Christian is more interested in having a good reputation, which reflects on the name of Christ, than we are about making quick money. It's not that we can't make a profit. We can. We see that's a biblical thing. But profit is not our highest priority. Jesus is. How we reflect on Christ is a higher priority than getting rich. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 16, we read this, "Oppressing the poor to enrich oneself and giving to the rich both lead only to poverty." A couple mistakes people make when trying to get rich quickly is that they tend to either oppress the poor, sometimes that happens, or they will try and give things to rich people in order to impress them, giving them gifts, freebies, thinking it will endear them to them. This is because I think they don't understand economics, and they are trying to find a quick way to make money. Now, we looked at oppressing the poor a few weeks back when we looked at the law of the harvest and how God looks at that. You'll reap what you sow, and if you sow oppression, you'll reap God's judgment. Okay, we looked at that. You can go back and watch that. It's on YouTube if you'd like to see it. But we saw that those who oppress the poor insult their maker. God takes that sort of thing very personally. So if you're oppressing the poor to make yourself rich, understand you're making a powerful enemy in God. He doesn't like that. And he will at some point see justice is done. You can watch that one on the previous sermon. You never know. I mean, he might just send the Ghost of Christmas Past to straighten you out. Okay. Try to get Christmas in here. Just okay. However, oppressing the poor to get rich also counterproductive because it alienates a large share of the market. The truth is, and this might line up a little bit with what we're seeing here in Proverbs, there's a lot of poor people out there. If you deliver a quality product at a reasonable price, those poor people will do business with you. If you oppress them and take unfair advantage of the poor, then you're alienating a large customer base. People often underestimate the financial potential of doing business with the poor. For something to become a household item, something that everyone has, it must be economically attainable by a significant number of people who are considered poor. Those who are at the top of the economic food chain have usually learned to value marketing their product, a household item, and that means marketing it to the poor. This is why, on average, a McDonald's franchise location is likely to generate higher overall revenue and more consistent profits than a steakhouse. Why? Because they've learned to market to people with a lower income threshold. They have a different customer base. They win on volume of sales over individual amounts of profit on each item. And in fact, maybe you heard this in the news recently, McDonald's sales had dropped off and they recognized that they were losing the poorer customers because their prices had gone too high, and they came out with a value menu again. Why? They're marketing to the poor. Now, I don't think the steakhouse has come out with a value menu. Okay? But on average, your average McDonald's location will have more profit and volume of sales than your average steakhouse. To deliberately oppress the poor can cost you a lot of potential customers. Okay, now we looked at God's judgment on that in the previous week, but here we're looking at the financial aspect. It's a foolish thing to do. The flip side of this verse is that giving to the rich can also lead to poverty. People often make the mistake of thinking that they can impress wealthy people, give them gifts, and then maybe I'll become wealthy like them. If I hang out with them, I'll become wealthy. The problem is wealth does not come from association. Okay, hanging out with wealthy people will not make you rich. It comes from proper investment of labor and resources. Just because you give rich people gifts doesn't mean you're going to become rich. It's not likely that they're going to give you any of their money just because you give them gifts. They're rich because they know how to make money and they know how to manage money. If they didn't know how to manage money, they wouldn't stay rich. I saw a thing in the news about a football player lamenting during his football career. He's retired now. He had only made $100 million and he wasn't sure he could make that last his whole lifetime. Problem is, he made the money, but he didn't know how to manage it. He didn't know how to manage it. Getting money doesn't necessarily always help. In fact, the rich person, likely because they know how to make money, their interest in their relationship with you is probably on terms of how they can make more money. They hope to make money off you, not just you make money off them. And so that's not going to help you become rich. The only thing giving gifts to impress rich people does is make you poor because you're spending your money where there's no return. The bottom line that we find in Scripture is that what the Bible teaches in favor of us being industrious, hardworking, and making a profit so that we can earn an honest living and provide for our needs. There's no shame in making a profit to make an honest living. There's no shame in providing for your family's needs. What the Bible opposes is taking unfair advantage of people and the wanton pursuit of wealth beyond what anybody needs. Okay, there's a point where you just don't need that much. If you want to make money, then you need to produce a product or service that people will value enough to pay for it. Produce something they want. They'll buy it. It takes work and it takes skill. Or you can invest the resources you have wisely so that they will grow over time, but that does take time and patience. Time and patience. You know, most of us have a retirement account where you invest in it over a lifetime. It's not just one week's investment that makes your retirement account successful. It's a lifetime of investment. So get-rich-quick schemes are almost always lead you just deeper into poverty. Okay, they don't make you rich. Now, there are a couple of dynamics Proverbs tells us about that we need to be aware of when doing business. And so let's look at those this morning as we pass by this way. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 14. It's worthless, the buyer says. But afterward, when he's on his way, he gloats. When doing business, people tend to talk in their own financial favor. And it's something you need to be aware of when doing business. They aren't usually straightforward and honest if it's to their disadvantage. This is just something, any business deal you're looking at, you need to be aware of this. A car salesman will tell you all the good things about the car he wants to sell you. He very rarely will tell you the bad things about it, unless you ask. Okay? And I'm not just talking about lying. Sometimes it's just they fail to mention anything you don't ask about. Buyer beware. On the other hand, the buyer will likely not admit how much they like the car or that it has exactly what they were looking for when they want to buy it because they don't want the price to go up. Okay? He will act like he can't afford it and complain about the price and the quality until after the salesman's gone. The buyer, then will brag about the deal he got. Or maybe the buyer will try to act poor when going to buy a car. I don't know if you've seen the Bill Cosby show. When he had the Cosby show, he dressed up in rags to go buy a car with his son. He's a doctor, but he's dressed up because he doesn't want the salesman to know what he does for a living. He thinks he'll get a better deal, or that the price will go up if they know what he does. Funny thing is, while he's there, somebody recognized, oh, hey, Dr. Huxtable. And so it blows the story. We need to be aware that people will rarely be completely honest in their descriptions of a product or deal, especially if you're dealing with a non-Christian person. They almost always explain things in their favor. Okay, whenever you hear someone selling something, they're explaining it in their favor. Just be aware of that. As Christians, I do not believe we should act that way. Not that you are required to disclose information that isn't asked of you, but you are required to be honest and to ensure that any deal you're a party to is fair to everyone. Okay, the Christian has the goal of it being fair to everyone. We aren't just in business to line our pockets. We want to make fair deals and to bless people in a way that honors God. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, we read, do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. Everyone should look not to his own interest, but rather to the interest of others. We seek to be faithful and to have a good testimony in our work, because our goal is Christ being glorified as we work and as we make a living. We don't do it just to do whatever it takes to get ourselves rich. That's not our goal. We are willing to act in the best interest of others, making sure we always treat them fairly, give them an honest deal. However, we do need to be aware that there are people who will want to take advantage of us because of our Christian business ethic. They may try to seek credit. You're a Christian. Will you loan me this? Will you let me borrow? Last week we saw that we should not borrow, but the flip side of that is we should probably not loan to people either. We're warned, this is Proverbs chapter 20, verse 16, take his garment, for he has put up security for a stranger, get collateral if it is for a foreigner. We looked at a very similar verse last week, not the same one, but a very similar one. But if a person is willing to put up security for a stranger or for foreigners who could leave or maybe get deported at any time, you never know, then that person lacks any business sense. And you shouldn't trust them. It's a good warning sign that this is not the person to do business with. Make sure if you loan that person something, you get collateral, is what the proverb is telling us, because they aren't going to pay you back. Okay? Now, personally, I don't do credit. This is just my own thing, and I think it's kind of a biblical concept. But I never loan anything to anyone. I just don't. If somebody needs something and I can afford to help them, I help them. I give it to them. I don't loan it to them. If I can't, well, then I can't. But whatever I do give someone, I never expect anything in return. Somebody comes to me and says, "Can I borrow $5? Remember when I was a kid, somebody wanted to borrow $5 for lunch, and I loaned them $5. Well, I didn't loan it to him; I gave it to him because if he paid me back, great, and if he didn't pay me back, that's fine too. You give it, and that way you don't have to deal with the repercussions. I never expect anything in return. Now, if they do come back later and say, "Hey, you gave me this, I want to give it back," well, that's great, that's wonderful, no problem. But I don't expect it. And I don't base my ability to help them on whether or not I need them to pay me back. So that's where you get into trouble. When someone says, "Can I borrow $100?" and you only have your grocery money, you say, "Okay, I'll loan it to you," and then they don't pay you back, what are you going to do? Okay? You give what you can afford to give. You be generous, you share, but you don't give what you can't afford. You have to provide for your family. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble and a lot of hard feelings if you adopt such a policy. And I think it's saved me a lot of trouble over my lifetime. One final thought on business from the book of Proverbs. Sometimes we do need to hire people. We do need help. We need to hire people who will work for us. Remember that we looked at earlier, without the experience of the ox, without the expense of the ox, you won't get a plentiful harvest. Well, sometimes you need to have someone help you, someone work for you. But good help's hard to find. Okay? Good help's hard to find. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 26. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so the slacker is to the one who sends him on an errand. Proverbs 25:19. Trusting an unreliable person in a difficult time is like a rotten tooth or a faltering foot. Hiring a lazy person or an unreliable person who cannot be trusted is going to cause you pain. Okay? And if you've been an employer, you know this. Employees can cause you trouble. Irritation, maybe even injury, loss of money, loss of business. Hiring an incompetent person to work is like biting into something with a rotten tooth. It hurts. I was doing business with a plumbing company I liked, and turned out the guy's son was also a plumber, and he came and did some work, and he was just rude and incompetent. And, I've never gone back to him. Like the father, but not the son. On the other hand, what you find hiring the right person can really pay off. Proverbs 25:13. To those who send him a trustworthy envoy is like the coolness of snow on a harvest day. He refreshes the life of his master. A good and reliable worker is a pleasure to have working for you. It is refreshing, like the coolness of snow on a harvest day. But it would also seem that experience is rare. How often does it snow in the middle of the harvest? Not very often, at least not in Phoenix it doesn't. And so I kind of get the feeling that the proverb is also telling us this is a rare experience to find good, dependable workers. People have a tendency to work for their own self-interest. They work best for themselves when they're doing their own business, when they're minding their business. And that is to their advantage. Okay? When you're working on your own business, it's to your advantage to do it well. And so you tend to do better. If you find someone else that will work hard and be industrious for you, a company man, you ought to treat them well. That's the person you want working for you. If you find such an employee, because they are hard to find. Well, how do you find such a person? Proverbs chapter 26, verse 10. The one who hires a fool or who hires those passing by is like an archer who wounds everyone indiscriminately. The Bible doesn't really tell us how to find good employees, but it does tell us how to find bad ones. Okay, this is how you get bad ones. If you know someone is incompetent, if they're a fool, don't hire them. If you hired someone for a job and you weren't satisfied with their work, don't hire them again. Okay, I don't know about you. I don't go back to places that give bad service. I just don't go. I get bad service, I'm not going there anymore. I go somewhere else. Well, that's a good philosophy. If you hire people at random, just because they're passing by, just because you need a warm body to fill this hole in your corporate structure, then you are like a person who just goes around shooting indiscriminately, not knowing what you're going to hit. Chances are you're going to do more harm than good. It's foolish. The Bible warns against careless hiring practices. So if you want good workers, then you probably ought to do the opposite. My advice would be pray hard and carefully research people before you hire them. Check their references. Find out if they're any good. See what talent they have, what abilities they have, what's their work ethic. Now, they say word of mouth is the best reference. You see who they have worked for that you know and get a personal reference. That's always a good thing. Listening to testimony from people you can trust. Although I have to admit, personally, I have usually not been happy with that method. Word of mouth has not always been my favorite thing, and I don't like to recommend people because then it comes back on me if they do bad. So I try and avoid that. However, our world system our current system allows some benefits that they didn't have in the past, such as social media reviews. You can check how many stars they have on Google. It's not a bad plan. Actually, even buying on Amazon, it tells you how many stars it has from the ratings, and it'll even tell you if this is a product that's frequently returned. It's a bad thing. Don't buy it. That's a good thought. Look at the reviews. What has been written about them? Is there a reoccurring theme in those reviews? If there is, it probably tells you something about their work ethic. I was recently helping my mom. She's moved into kind of a rehab nursing out of the hospital. She's out of the hospital now. And she wanted to know about a couple different places that she could choose. They give you like a 6-page list of all the different places. And so I'm looking them up and, looking at the reviews. And, one place it says, well, they didn't cut my food up enough. They didn't, blah, blah, blah. You look at another, oh, it stinks of urine and all this. Well, which one, okay, both of them got a 1 star, but which one do you really not want? The one that stinks or the one that didn't cut your food right? Okay. You got to think through, what do people say? Is there a pattern? And in fact, I'll tell you one thing you can do. AI actually will summarize it for you. If you say, what are the reviews on this? It will summarize. You can do that in most of the AI things, and it'll just look it up and tell you this is what their standard complaints and compliments are. Another thing you can do is you can check with the Better Business Bureau, the Corporation Commission, and the Registry of Contractors, any of which can signal problems with an individual or company's work. Check them out. Check them out. And if they're not listed there, find out why. I've learned the hard way that if you do your research, it can spare you a lot of aggravation and loss. However, if you're too lazy to do the research, then chances are you're going to suffer the pain of having incompetent workers doing damage to your life because you just hired someone indiscriminately. So in the end, I think we can say that business, like so many of our other activities in life, really do come down to a heart issue. Okay, we're given some guidelines, we're given some wisdom of how we can do better and avoid some of these traps, but it really comes down to a heart issue. We are called as believers to live and to conduct ourselves in a Christ-like manner. Okay, that doesn't go away when you go to work. It doesn't go away when you do side projects. You still are to live as a Christian. We want all things that we do to bring glory to God in whatever we do. If you're an employee, you need to approach your work with that attitude. You need to have it set in your heart to honor God by providing an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. On the flip side, if you're an employer, you need to have it set in your heart to provide an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Goes both ways. We should glorify God and consider others. Or maybe you're like so many in the world and you're out there looking out for yourself. You just want to make the bottom line. You just want to put money in your pocket at someone else's expense. That is the opposite of what the Christian should do. The goals we set in our heart, whether our goal is to glorify Christ or to glorify self, will determine the actions that play out in real life. Okay, and we can talk a good game. A lot of people can talk Christian, but living it's a different story. I heard about one guy, he said he called up a lady from church, and she answered the phone with several expletives, and he said, I know there were part-time Christians. Apparently it was her day off. Yes, yes. He said, then when I told her who it was, I'm brother so-and-so, she goes, oh, praise the Lord. He's, oh no. What you're not going to do is act like you did to discuss me out. That's what you're not going to do. But that's true for all of us. See, are we living for Jesus 24/7 or just Sunday morning? If you find yourself on the wrong side of this equation, if you've been doing business like Ebenezer Scrooge, the solution is to repent and come to Jesus so he can change your heart. You need a heart change. And that's what Jesus will do for you if you find you're doing it wrong. You must dethrone the idols of self. That's usually our number one idol, is we put ourselves on the throne. We want us to be important. We have to depose the idol of greed. We have to depose the idol of laziness and bow before our rightful king, Jesus. Now, I don't know about you. I grew up, I loved all the Christmas carol stories, but to me, it always touched my heart. Because when I was younger, I kind of struggled with wanting to get rich. In fact, I bought a safe when I was 16. I bought a safe so I could store my future riches. Problem is, I spent all the money on the safe, and I don't have anything to put in it. Hey, I got my Bible and my baptism certificate. There's some things there, but birth certificates, that kind of stuff. But that was something I struggled with when I was young, and the story of A Christmas Carol always resonated with me and helped me, I think, get some focus. And so, if that helps you, it's good. But sometimes we have to dethrone our desire for wealth so that we can enthrone Christ. So he'll be on the throne. Let him and his kingdom become the treasure that you seek, and then he will help you do business God's way. He'll change your heart, and it'll change your actions. Thank you for watching this video. If you live in the greater Phoenix area, we would love to have you come and worship with us in person any Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. The Meadows Baptist Church is located at 3701 West Beardsley Road. That's the side road of the 101, just west of 35th Avenue. We would love to have you pop by as we celebrate Jesus together.